Sound taps into ancient evolutionary programming. Birdsong signals safety, shutting down our defensive posture, while low frequencies ground the nervous system. Welcome back to Brain Hack of Sound. It is time to explore mind and sounds in a series of presentations.
All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to explore how sound and music actually act as this ancient evolutionary brain hack that physically rewires our minds. Think about a really stressful day you've had recently. You throw on your favorite track, close your eyes, and bam, you almost instantly feel your entire mood shift, right? We usually think of music as just, entertainment, just some pleasant background noise for the morning commute. But the research, it shows it's so much more than that. It's a profound biological catalyst. Today, we're zooming in on the neuroscience of sound, looking at how our deep evolutionary history literally hardwired us to react to specific acoustic triggers. By the end of this, I promise you'll look at and listen to your everyday audio environment in a completely different way.
So I want to start off with a bit of a mystery for you. Why does the simple sound of birdsong instantly lower your heart rate? Have you ever noticed that? You step outside into nature, take a nice deep breath of fresh air, hear a bird singing, and immediately, your shoulders just drop, your chest relaxes. Well, the answer reveals that our biological reactions to sound aren't just about our personal taste in music. They're actually deep-seated, ancient survival mechanisms. Our brains are reacting exactly the way they were programmed to hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Moving right into section 1, our evolutionary soundscape and the ancient origins of hearing. Let's see how all this builds, starting way back before humans even had spoken language. Archaeological and anthropological evidence actually suggests that music and rhythm predate complex speech. Our ancestors were using vocalizations for survival, connection, and coordination long before they ever had actual words for those concepts.
Which brings us to this incredibly fascinating concept called the safe environment theory. Basically, this theory explains that our early ancestors relied on the continuous acoustic scanning of nature just to know if they were safe. I mean, before we had home security systems or ring cameras or weather apps pinging our phones to warn us of a storm, we had to rely heavily on nature's audio cues. Our primitive subconscious was just constantly, relentlessly listening to the background track of the wilderness to figure out what the heck was going on around us.
And understanding this completely shifts how we view everyday sounds. When birds are singing, it means the environment is stable and peaceful. It literally tells our primitive brain, hey, there are no immediate threats lurking in the bushes. When that happens, our sympathetic nervous system, which is basically the body's internal alarm bell, just shuts down its defensive posture, instantly dropping our muscle tension. But on the flip side, if a predator is nearby or a dangerous storm is rolling in, those birds go completely silent, or they let out these harsh, panicked alarm calls. In the wild, sudden silence is a huge red flag for immediate danger.
Now, what's super fascinating here is that this reaction isn't just some cultural preference we picked up over the centuries. No, it's an innate genetic trait called biophilia. Biophilia proves that our bodies are deeply hardwired to react to these ancient sonic cues. So when we integrate natural elements, like the sound of running water, crackling fires, or birdsong, into our functional music today, we're tapping directly into that ancient evolutionary programming. It gives us this profound sense of grounding and safety that modern digital, synthetic sounds just can't achieve on their own.
Okay, section 2, the neurochemistry of sound, looking at hormones and the limbic system. Now that we know why we listen and how our evolutionary history shaped us, let's explore exactly what happens to our brain chemistry when those sound waves hit our limbic system. Sound waves are wild because they completely bypass the rational, conscious part of our brain and trigger an immediate, involuntary shift in hormone production.
Think about modern erratic noise, sirens, jackhammers, or even just chaotic open office chatter. All of that triggers our fight or flight stress response. When we hear aggressive, high-frequency noise, a part of our brain called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis for short, kicks into absolute overdrive and spikes our cortisol levels. We get stressed out, and our body literally prepares for battle. But we can actually use functional music as a countermeasure through a technique called acoustic deceleration.
By using slow, predictable structures, specifically tracking right around 60 beats per minute, the auditory cortex signals the amygdala that the environment is totally safe, effectively putting the brakes on that stress response.
Now, I want you to hold on to this number because it is massive, 65%. Clinical studies show that listening to targeted ambient music, specifically tracks with low-frequency pads and absolutely no sudden jarring volume spikes, can reduce your circulating cortisol levels by up to 65%. That is a staggering physiological shift. We're not just talking about a placebo effect or feeling kind of relaxed. This is a physical, measurable drop that's often way more effective than many medical interventions for acute stress. It lowers your blood pressure, drops your heart rate, and actively crushes systemic anxiety.
And beyond just stopping stress in its tracks, music actually acts as a primal reward system, just like eating when you're hungry or sleeping when you're tired. It induces these massive positive chemical shifts. When a chord swells and resolves perfectly, it triggers a huge surge of dopamine in your nucleus accumbens. That's what gives you those magical musical chills, or what scientists call frisson. You know that feeling during an epic movie soundtrack or a swelling choir performance where the hair on your arms literally stands up? That's frisson. Plus, group listening or immersing yourself in deeply resonant vocal music stimulates the release of oxytocin. That's the exact same hormone responsible for social bonding, empathy, and emotional security.
Moving right along to Section 3, Rewiring Your Brain. We'll be looking at neuroplasticity and structure. Shifting away from those temporary chemical changes for a minute, let's look at how music catalyzes permanent structural neuroplasticity. We're talking about the brain's incredible ability to actually reorganize itself and form brand new physical neural connections throughout your entire life.
When you consistently listen to complex music, your brain physically upgrades its hardware through 3 compounding structural changes. Let's break these down because they're pretty cool. First up is synaptogenesis. Think of this like a city laying down brand new roads. Your brain creates completely new synapses just to process all those complex layers of tone, timbre, and rhythm. Second is dendritic branching. This is kind of like your brain expanding its reception antennas. Your neurons literally grow thicker, denser branch-like projections to receive signals, creating a much more robust network. And third, your corpus callosum, which is that thick band of nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of your brain, actually enlarges. It's literally like upgrading the connection between the 2 halves of your brain from an old dial-up modem to a high-speed fiber optic cable. This heavily myelinated upgrade massively boosts your creative problem-solving and cognitive flexibility.
Now, the concept of auditory entrainment is truly fascinating. Our brains operate on varying electrical frequencies depending on what we're doing. When we're in a stressed, high-alert beta state, our internal rhythms naturally align with fast, chaotic, unstructured sound. But through auditory entrainment, external ambient rhythms can literally force our internal brainwaves to downshift. So by introducing a steady, continuous frequency, like an 8 Hz flowing ambient track, we naturally, involuntarily drop out from that stressed beta state and slip right into a calm alpha or theta state. This completely maximizes our brain's capacity for deep neuroplastic learning.
All right, Section 4, the acoustic architecture, designing the perfect soundscape. For our final section here, let's break down the actual tools used to perfectly exploit this evolutionary programming. Crafting highly functional music requires knowing exactly how different sonic components alter human perception. So we can actually map different frequency spectrums directly to our physical reactions. Let's start down low. Low frequencies, anywhere from 20 to 150 Hz, physically vibrate the body and ground the nervous system. Why? Because they perfectly replicate the comforting, rhythmic thud of a mother's heartbeat heard from inside the womb. Mid-frequencies sit in the everyday zone of human speech, where our brains are highly actively sensitive to emotional nuance and communication. And then high frequencies give texture and air to the music. When those highs are smooth and rolling, kind of like the sound of gentle rain, they invite this open-minded, airy focus without triggering any sort of hypervigilance. And by using specific instruments, we can directly target our biology.
Bowed strings, especially cellos, produce these rich overtones that mimic the human voice. They actually resonate at the exact frequency of the human chest cavity, which creates a deep sense of physical comfort. Ambient pads and synthesizers are great because they remove sharp, percussive elements. That makes your analytical brain stop measuring time intervals, literally erasing your perception of time so you can slip seamlessly into a flow state. Finally, wordless vocals stimulate the vagus nerve, giving you pure emotional resonance. This is absolutely crucial because it spares your brain from having to process lyrics. When you listen to songs with words, your brain's language centers are forced to go to work analyzing the meaning. By using wordless vocals, you get all the emotion and focus without the cognitive drain.
I think this brilliantly illustrates why sound is so phenomenally powerful. As the research notes, music is one of the few stimuli that engages literally every known area of the brain simultaneously. It's an all-encompassing biological catalyst that touches every single part of our neural network. It leverages hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary survival wiring to change our biochemistry and actually reshape our physical brain structure. I want to leave you with this thought to reflect on today. Based on your evolutionary wiring, what does your daily audio diet actually sound like? Knowing how profoundly noise alters your brain structure, your stress hormones, and your entire nervous system, how will you consciously curate your own evolutionary soundscape today? Are you going to subject yourself to erratic noise that spikes your cortisol, or will you use acoustic deceleration and the sounds of nature to hack your brain into a state of growth and peace? Definitely something to think about the next time you put your headphones on. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.